Hi, Heidi Fichtenbaum. I'm the chair of the Princeton Environmental Commission. So thank you for coming and speaking with us today. I was very interested to hear about the building on the stream restoration that you described, the one on Washington Avenue that's been very successful. The Environmental Commission has been thinking about this because Lake Carnegie actually is categorized as an impaired body of water, and we are hoping that we could continue that conversation with you as part of this planning process in order to decrease the amount of pollutants that are channeled into that body of which would be very cool. And then I guess I was also wondering, because you talked about the metrics of that you're working with on all of these, whether you are evaluating the multitude of options that you're looking at in terms of their carbon footprint, and how one may seem to generate a better a reduced carbon footprint than another. So that was one question. And my second question was recognizing that there's, Princeton as a university and then as the town, and the synergy between them make this actually a pretty delightful place to live, and as a consequence, and to study and do research. And as a consequence, there's quite a bit of development pressure all around, not just, the university and its planning process, but affordable housing pressures and just general housing, other institutions. So I'm wondering also if you're looking at services and infrastructure and the tipping points where all of a sudden new infrastructure gets generated. It's, the straw that breaks the camel's back. So it's only 20 students that are added to the schools, or, rescue or police, or all these things are just very small and incremental. But at some point, all of a sudden, there's a qualitative shift. So I'm kind of wondering about that, and also this carbon footprint thing. Thank you.
Wow, that's a lot of very important questions. Do you want me to have a first go? Okay, so let me just make sure that I've captured all of them. We're also really excited about the restoration of the Washington Stream Corridor, and so as you heard me say, have definite aspirations. We have many members of our team who are interested in the way managing stormwater on land can contribute to the ultimate quality of the water body that receives it. And I think that you probably, if you sound very familiar with all these things, but not just the Washington Stream Corridor, but through the last campus plan, Princeton University set very ambitious intentions to improve water quality in terms of how it was managed, both on land and in the various infrastructure that connects to the lake. So we're continuing that and taking it to the next level. So you might call it stormwater protection 2.0, I think, is kind of the way our team thinks about it. But recognizing, I think I may get this wrong, but my recollection is that the Princeton campus footprint is only about 1% of the watershed, I think, that connects to Lake Carnegie. But it is an example, and I'm glad you raised it, of the place that even though the university's efforts, even if they were perfect on their management of stormwater, couldn't fix Lake Carnegie, but it can contribute, and it can actually test efforts, or test initiatives that hopefully could be replicated in other places. So I could talk to you a long time about water, and I'm happy to after, but I think some of the key things that we're doing is setting targets around suspended solids and the contaminated elements that reach the lake, looking to aggressively reduce those. There is an ongoing effort now to monitor water quality that's going into the lake, so that we'll have hard data that can then be tracked over time. I think that's one of the challenges in sustainability efforts that we all suffer from, is intentions are broad, but specifics are not always so broad. So wherever possible, there's a big goal, including, as an example, I mentioned our collaboration with Kim Jackson's team in terms of looking at mobility. So how, what is the proportion of people who come by transit, bicycling, and on their feet today, and what specific measures, both policy and infrastructure, like the networks that we described, can be put in place to move the needle. So, but back to water. Let me just make sure I capture everything. So carbon is fundamental to all of the things that we're looking at. Certainly the team is actively understanding how energy generation and conservation contribute to carbon reduction. Princeton is already looked at as one of the institutional leaders in terms of its very efficient generation of energy and its ability to contribute to resiliency. I understand that the university was an important resource when power went out in the area during the Sandy superstorm. But what's the next version of that? If the ambition was to become carbon neutral, as an example, in some time period. And I'm not an engineer, but I understand that New Jersey is a very hard place to become carbon neutral. Just climate is as challenging as you can possibly get, and a variety of other things. But our team has been charged to push as hard as it can to get as close as possible in as short a time frame. So that's definitely work that we're doing. And a whole lot of other things that we talked about contribute to carbon. One of the really fun things that we've got as part of the member of our team, which I didn't list specifically, is a group called Sustainable Water, who are looking at the ability to reclaim black and gray water and use it to clean it. It can be clean to drinking water standards, but most people don't actually want to do that. But certainly it can be used in the energy plant. It can be used to irrigate fields, and so that would dramatically reduce the amount of water that would be going into the wastewater stream. So also the conveyance of that water generates carbon. So all of these things being thought of together. I think that maybe the last point that you raised was this idea of tipping points, and that's hard. It's a subtle thing. I think the conversation, that growth is incremental, so when you actually cross it, it's hard to know. And there's so many possible ones. But what I would assure you is that we have, I've forgotten, but I don't know, I think at least 6, maybe 8 engineering firms on our team. They're all looking at the capacity today of the whole variety of networks of Princeton's own infrastructure, but also its fit within the community's broader infrastructure. Everything from the sanitary sewer capacity in the I think Stony Brook facility, as well as traffic capacity. You heard us talk about that before. So to the best of the team's ability, we're trying to understand what the current constraints are, and therefore what would be needed both on the university's part, on its own campus, and potentially as a contribution to the bigger infrastructure needs in the community that its growth might contribute to. So I hope that answers your questions.
You.